Hey, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. We have two special guests with us today. Jason Howerton is back from CRTV. Yay! And we have some more estrogen in the room, Dr. Deborah So.
Wow.
And can you please tell everyone what your expertise is?
I'm a science journalist, and I'm a columnist for Playboy.com and the Globe and Mail, which is Canada's national newspaper.
Yes, yeah, from Toronto.
Yes.
So you like Texas so far?
I do. I'm loving it here.
Good, awesome.
So now when you say, I just want, because if anybody knows you, because we talked about this earlier, I think, let's have a vote. I think the Playboy credential hurts. It makes it sound like, oh, I'm Dr. Ruth Westheimer. That you are a real, legitimate scientist that looks and studies the brain for you went for hypersexuality.
Hypersexuality and paraphilias is what I used to do, yeah.
Right. And then what was the second one? It's
Oh, and hypersexuality and paraphilias.
paraphilias, which
I know what all those things
know
are.
what-
I'll tell you
We
that.
don't need to go into it.
Look,
but
I'm a doctor. I could explain because you told me about 20 minutes ago. That is just abnormal or out of the
Yeah.
mainstream.
Unusual sexual preferences. But I have to say, Playboy has a history of having excellent journalism, so I am very grateful for them
I've always read it.
giving
for the
me a,
pictures.
a
Or women.
platform.
Freudian slip.
It's just a stereotype. That's,
No, I know, yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Glenn Beck, what
Yes.
is the top story for you?
Well, I'm going to have to use the M word today.
Oh,
I'm going to do it. I'm
Glenn,
gonna
this
do
is a family-friendly show.
I
You
know,
realize that.
I know,
Are you
I know.
sure?
Doctor, you good with that?
Oh, if you have to.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, still.
There's a giant hurricane hitting the coast, and that's, of course, because we all drove here in cars.
Oh, dear God.
Okay.
I'm gonna piggyback on Glenn. It won't be the first time. So
Wait, what kind of activities are we missing out on? What was it?
Not with Dr.
What was
Sawyer.
it again?
Doctor's here. Anything goes today.
Dr. So.
future state.
I'm going to be talking about the American Academy of Pediatrics and a statement that they put out.
Okay. All right, before we get into...
Right, she's too smart for us. This is not good.
Boy, this show's gotten better.
Before we get into all of that, want to thank our sponsor, Riduzone. Riduzone is great if you need to lose a lot of weight, like I did at one particular
Look at that.
point in my life.
Which one is her?
Yes. Yeah, it's,
Can you believe that? Yeah, look at that face.
No.
yes.
Is
Yes.
that crazy?
Wait, no.
Yeah.
Girl.
Wait,
Yeah, oh, you
are we
didn't-
being
you
for real
haven't
right
seen
now?
Yeah, she's number 10.
No, that's really me. That
She's
was
10.
that was me.
I'm the
12 years ago?
one standing next to her, but she was number 10. I wouldn't even recognize her.
I
Yeah.
don't
So
recognize
those listening
her.
on the podcast, I was about 100 pounds heavier than I am right now. So I do know about weight
Don't
loss.
even look the same.
I know about weight loss, and I know how hard it is.
No.
So thankfully, there is Riduzone if you need to lose weight or if you're just trying to maintain, keep that weight off. It takes the good molecule in olive oil, and you get a metabolism boost, and you also get a handle on your cravings. It has worked for me. It really has. I can tell you that. You can go to riduzone.com and save 30% off of a 3-month supply, and use promo code THEBLAZE, and that is riduzone.com for all of you podcast listeners. Glenn,
Yes.
do you mind if I go to the guests first as far as the top stories go?
Well, as she's doctor of the brain, I'm a doctor of humanities, so I can talk about the entire body, but we'll...
Ladies first.
Ladies first. We'll
You'll be
defer to
able
her.
to weigh in on this
Yes,
as a fellow doctor.
Go ahead.
Okay, please.
So the American Academy of Pediatrics released a statement saying that for children who are gender dysphoric or gender nonconforming, that the best way forward is to affirm them. But from a scientific perspective, the research consistently shows that the best way forward is actually to wait and see what happens at puberty.
So there are...
So they're going against science.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
doesn't
basically.
seem to be abnormal now.
No, it's becoming more and more the norm, especially on this issue with the children. And I find it really concerning because these are actual lives at stake. These are children who are impressionable and who are very much dependent on their parents and caregivers to do the right thing.
And the science says that they are more likely to,
Desist.
right, and more likely to become just homosexual.
Right, to grow
Later?
up to be gay in adulthood, they won't be transgender.
Okay. What happens to a child when you start injecting them with things and they're 14?
Are you talking about as far as altering their hormones?
Yeah,
and stuff
altering
like
their
that?
hormone. You start injecting them, you start doing the things that some people are now doing to their teenagers or allowing their teenagers to do.
Right. So pubertal blockers are one approach that are being advocated for, but we don't actually know what the long-term effects will be because it is an off-label use. When it comes to cross-sex hormones, sterilization can be one of the outcomes. And even if you stop taking cross-sex hormones, you'll be left with physical changes. So if you're taking testosterone and you stop, you'll still get facial hair. Your voice will forever be changed. And obviously with surgery is irreversible.
So for like sex-specific hormones, testosterone, estrogen, whatever it may be, how important are those things for kids as they're growing up, as they're growing into young adults? Like to alter that or to say take a boy from developing testosterone, what does that do to a boy who is growing up into a young man?
That's the thing, we don't know yet. So I should emphasize I don't work with children. I used to work in a research capacity only, but it's completely new ground, and it's in the name of being progressive. I do think for kids who are gender nonconforming or gender dysphoric or who say they are born in the wrong body, that they should be supported, and that parents should just be open-minded. Don't push your child one way or the other.
I think the biggest thing here too is like, it's one thing whether you get good results or bad results. If you're an adult and you do something that changes your body or whatever, that's kind of your call, right? Like, you're not in a position to figure out what you're going to have for dinner when you're a child, let alone figure out what sex you are if you're going to change. And when you're making those, permanent changes based on this information that's so young, I mean, it just seems completely unhealthy.
Doesn't taking estrogen also, maybe it's just older women, but when you take estrogen, doesn't that also have a higher rate of cancer?
Bone density also.
Right, so what is that going to mean? And we have no studies on it, and we're just doing it?
Yeah, these kids really are guinea pigs, and it's crazy. And for the parents too who speak out and say that, let's slow things down or let's advocate for some caution, they get called far right, they get called bigoted, they get called transphobic, they get told that their child is going to commit suicide. And that suicide statistic that they often bring up, they say 40% of trans people have tried to kill themselves. It is an inflated statistic. I don't doubt that being transgender is difficult, but it's not fair for that statistic to be thrown in parents' faces and used to emotionally blackmail them.
Yeah, because, let's say that they do believe the statistic. Does the medical community believe the statistic?
I think it depends who you talk to.
Okay, go ahead.
I think legitimate practitioners and clinicians would advocate for caution, but just in this climate, they know that they're going to be called these awful names, so they're afraid to say.
Because to me, it's like if you think that statistic exists, or if there's any sort of statistic that transgenders are more likely to commit suicide, you wouldn't want to push them to that.
But after the sex change, it's just as high, is it not?
Right. For some people, transitioning can be beneficial, but there have been studies that have shown that the suicide rate does continue. So it's important to get at the underlying cause, especially with these kids who say these things. Kids say all kinds of things. Yeah. So why are we not looking at what's the reasoning for what they're saying instead of taking it at face value?
My son actually said he was a cat yesterday. Yeah. But I actually know that he's not.
Tail attachment or?
No, I didn't actually. Yeah. I just told him, you're actually not a cat.
Wow,
you're
what a far-right hate monger.
So, doctor, let me ask you this. I'm a Mormon, okay? And our doctrine teaches that each of us is, designed beforehand. We come down, we get a body, whatever your body is, flaws and all, that's what you're supposed to deal with, okay? And changing the body, especially the gender, for somebody of my faith is not good, I'm not pushing that on anybody else. That's just what I believe. Can't a parent say with love and understanding, if my child was gender dysphoric, I would forget religion. You're not doing anything until you're on your own, until you're an adult. But is there any benefit for a parent to say, you know, I understand, and what lifestyle you choose later in life, you know, that's your business and whatever. But be happy with who you are. Be happy, and I understand that there might be some dysphoria, but shouldn't we treat that? Shouldn't we talk about that? Shouldn't we be able to be happy with who we are? Fat, feeling differently, whatever it is. Can't a parent say, no, honey, you're born the way you were born, and that's the way it is?
They should be able to. I agree with you. I think for the parents who are on board with this, some of them do it because they want to show off and show how open-minded they are. I think some others are coming from the perspective of previously. So in my perspective, I do think transitioning can be beneficial for adults. So they don't want to say...
I don't have a problem. You're an adult, do whatever you want.
Right.
It's your life.
So, but I think the reason why some people are a little bit more empathic to this cause is that they see transgender adults having suffered and not been allowed to transition. So they say, well, I don't want to do that to children, or I don't want to do that to my child, and prevent them from being happy if transitioning is going to make them happy. But I think these parents have been lied to. They don't realize that, again, most kids are going to outgrow it. Most kids are just going to be gay and fun, and they don't need to transition to be happy.
Could we do a little, if we have a second to do a little bit more on this, on that study that you mentioned that has over 40% of transgendered people committing suicide? It's such that's a really, to me, a really dangerous statistic. And when you look at the study, like, I mean, they didn't have follow-up questions. It was people who volunteered for the study. There's all sorts of flaws that make that number way too high. You look at, there's another category in the study for heterosexuals that are in the study, and their suicide rate is something like 34%. And it's like, do we think that 34% of heterosexuals are killing themselves? I mean, it doesn't seem likely. The problem with the stat, though, and why it's quoted so widely, at least this is my theory, is you have a situation where there's no one who's talking about this in this debate with an incentive to disprove it. People who are on the far right would say, well, you shouldn't live that lifestyle. Look at that suicide rate. People on the far left are saying, look how badly this community is being vilified. Look how high their suicide rate is. There's no one who has an incentive in the political argument to come in and say, wait a minute, look at this study. It is not saying what we're trying to make it say. And a stat like that can do a lot of damage. It really, I think, misinforms people, and no one can have kind of a real sensible conversation about it.
I think my fear from what she's saying is like, I feel like this, it sounds like, and it looks like the scientific community is kind of becoming afraid to just look at things objectively from a science standpoint, because if
or incentivized.
Right, because if you come out with a conclusion that is against what the trans community wants or whatever, then all of a sudden you've got this big firestorm and you got stuff that you don't want. That's my big fear, is that science becomes part of politics, and that's like the last thing we want.
And that's what I wanted to ask you was, because to me, I hear that coming from the medical community, and it makes me distrust the medical community as a whole.
I stopped on the butter thing. Butter's good, butter's bad, butter's good, butter's bad.
Eggs, the cholesterol. Yeah. I mean, what would you say to a parent who hears this and it's just like, I don't trust the doctors anymore?
Across the board, I think it's important to look at everything. With anything, look at it on a case-by-case, issue-by-issue basis. And if you're skeptical, do some digging and look at the studies yourself. See who's funding them. Look up the researchers. See where they're affiliated. What is their educational background? That can usually tell you a lot. Yeah.
We had a good conversation earlier about AI and the real true science behind looking, will a robot of a child help a pedophile act there and not in society? And that's an important study to do. And we were talking about funding and everything else. The problem, it seems, with science right now is we talk about get money out of government and politics. Money is driving much of the science, where if you want a grant, study what they're trying to prove. Prove what they want to prove. It's no longer the search for truth, it seems. It's, I want to find this answer, go find this answer, because I've got somebody who will pay for it. Yeah. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, and funding agencies also know if you find something that the public doesn't like, the public is not going to be happy, and they're going to be going after them and saying, well, why did you give these researchers money? So they don't want to deal with that on top of it.
Parents, I just want to warn you, when we come back after the break, we are going to be talking about the M word. So if you have any small children, you need to make sure that they leave the room. We may not be able to censor.
Oh, I just did it. Wow,
Okay,
sorry.
we need to take a break.
Take it back.
All right, before we get into the M word, I want to thank our sponsor, My Patriot Supply. As we mentioned earlier, Stu mentioned, there is a hurricane that is
we've had a
coming
couple.
towards Florida right now, and there's been one in North Carolina.
North Carolina, we had such a great run for how many years without being hit with anything?
Yeah.
You know,
We didn't pay attention to global warming.
Yep, and now we've warmed the earth to
Or
the point
cooling.
where we have to prepare for these things, apparently.
Yeah, well, but truly, I heard in Florida there's a lot of people who are expected to not have power.
Oh God, I mean, this is
So-
a really bad one. I
Yeah.
mean, it hit at almost a Category 5. Wind speeds 155 miles
yeah.
an hour upon landfall. It's going to be really damaging.
So these are the times when you really have to look at that and say, okay, they're without power. What do they do for food if they're stuck in their homes? If they still have a home, right? You're stuck in your home, you're without power, or you're flooded.
Nothing's going to be open.
We
Right.
were in Texas, we went down to Houston, and all of these people were leaving and they were going to stay at a hotel, and I looked at them. We were helping clean out their houses. They were not wealthy. How are you paying for the hotel and the food for you and your children for God knows how long?
With Harvey, it was weeks.
How are you doing that?
Yeah. So it is really important that you have some sort of food supply in the event that something like that happens. That is where My Patriot Supply comes in super handy. It's delicious food, and right here you can see a 2-week emergency food supply for $75. That's a steal. It includes breakfasts, lunches, and dinners
Longer than wrong.
for only $75. So you cannot pass that up. Go to preparewithnews.com. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to let you, Glenn,
Thank you.
introduce the
The
M
M
word.
word?
Yes.
So last night my wife was...
Just be gentle.
I know I will. My wife and I were talking, and she was, I don't know, yelling at me about something. And she was very intense. And it was late at night, and I was tired. And she was like, "Now listen, tomorrow we have to blah blah blah." And I just look down and I check, and I see the headline: Anchor freaks out over use of M word. And I never do this to my wife because it doesn't end well. I said, "Excuse me." And she said,
I'm surprised
"Are you
you're
even,
here today."
I know. Are you even listening to me?" And I'm like, "Usually, yes, just not right now." And I said, "Do you know what the M word is?" And she said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Let me read the headline. Anchor freaks out over use of M word. We're down to the M's now. What is the M word?" Here it is on CNN. Watch.
I believe it's the overreaction of the left. When you see people like Ted Cruz getting chased out of restaurants by a mob.
You're not going to use the mob
will.
word
Oh,
here.
it's totally a mob. It is without a doubt. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's a go watch. Put up the
a
video.
mob.
of Ted.
Stop.
Put up the video.
A mob is what we saw in Charlottesville, Virginia, 2 August ago.
No.
A mob
I think
is
so. That's a
not
riot.
what we saw
be a mob
chasing.
riot.
I'm
What
not
about-
saying
what
white
about
did
the
be
people
right.
vote?
Yeah,
What
it's a
about the
mob
people
riot.
who were at the Supreme Court banging on the walls? What do you
Okay,
call
stop.
that?
So here's the thing.
Civil protest?
On this whole thing, here's the thing. There's mob. That is a group of people that are trying to cause chaos of some sort. Doesn't have to be violent, doesn't have to hang people. That would be a lynch mob, okay? A mob can lead to a riot. If you can't define this as a mob, what we have seen, the mob mentality, if you can't say that it is a violent mob with Antifa, you are not even on the same planet anymore.
Yeah.
How many more words are we going to redefine?
What a weird word to protect, too.
Right? She was so outraged.
Yeah, so
by it.
outraged by
It's not
someone
even
saying,
that bad.
Yeah,
No.
it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
That's very strange. I mean, look, I think Charlottesville absolutely could have been described that way.
Yeah,
And
why can we not describe
Well,
both that way?
I think if a group of conservatives went into a restaurant and chased Cory Booker out of it, that would be a mob.
It would be a
You
violent
don't do
mob.
that.
We were told that you can't use in politics targeting districts because you were signaling you want to kill some people. Are you kidding me? Look at what's happening to us. The media is so discrediting themselves. The American people can see. You can see. It's what Martin Luther King said. Trust the American people. Put violent up to peaceful. They will pick peaceful every time. Americans can see what people are doing, and they can say, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't like that. I don't want to be a part. If conservatives act the same way in response, the American people will say, I don't want to be a part of either of you. You have to just put them up. The press is just discrediting them.
I do think it's funny.
Left.
I think it's revealing that Matt Lewis was asking her to play that clip, and she didn't cut to it. So, I'm just saying.
And she was very dismissive at the end. It was just, again, where the M word came from was at the end of that clip. She said, we're going to move on from the M word.
Yeah.
And just dismissed it. And
bizarre. I mean, and of course they go back to all the sources that did call the Tea Party mobs, including places like CNN and Huffington Post and all that did at that time. I mean, the double standard is a boring argument.
They never even got close.
Yeah, but it never got close to that.
But I was going to say, as a liberal, that is embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And to see them mobbing a couple having dinner, it makes those of us who are reasonable liberals say, the far left does not speak for us. We don't want anything to do with that. And we're going to move further right. So, like you're saying, I think that whichever side is behaving badly should be called out. And it just makes liberals look bad.
So being from the C place, which we have to call Canada in Texas, how does America look to you?
Look great. What do you mean by that? In what way?
Insane? Have we gone insane? Has Canada gone as nuts?
We've gone nuts too, though.
Okay.
So I feel like it's the pot calling the kettle black, really.
All right.
That's really sad, though, that you guys have gone so nuts that you think we look good.
But we're so polite, though. So when we're nuts, we're really nuts,
Well, you did have that. Who was that? Who was the cocaine guy? The mayor that was like crazy?
Doug Ford?
Yeah. I mean,
People
we're not
loved
there
him,
yet.
though.
People loved him.
But seriously, though, where have you guys gone so much farther than us?
Well, I mean, we have the hate speech thing. We have compelled speech with the gender-neutral pronouns. We have the sex ed curriculum telling kids that gender's a spectrum and that it's due to traditional gender norms, things like that. Whereas at least I feel with the States, there is more of a pushback. Whereas in Canada, people just kind of say, oh, and then they look the other way.
We have freedom of speech. You don't. How scary is it to speak out? I mean, here we pay a very high price, but I imagine you're paying a very high price there. But in Canada, you can actually become in trouble with the law as well for saying, no, that's not true. I mean, Jordan Peterson, no, I'm not going to call them by their selected pronoun because it's not true.
Right. I mean, it's gone so far now, with the whole gender ideology stuff where kids are being taken from their families if their families don't affirm them. And so going back to the topic we were just discussing, if parents are just wanting to take a slower approach, if the child decides that's not okay, they can be removed from the home.
It's horrifying.
Wow. Okay, well, America's looking pretty good right
Yeah,
now.
I'm feeling good about
Are we
America.
closer to an ending of this? Or
There
are
was
we
actually a case in Ohio of this happening, so you guys are catching up.
Oh, great.
Oh, okay, even better. All right, let's take a break.
Oh, I'm usually down.
Glenn, yeah, you just asked her an important question.
So, doctor, as another doctor, are we closer to the end, or are we closer to the beginning of this nightmare?
I think we're coming to an end where there will be a new beginning. I think most people are not on board with these loopy ideas, and it will come to a point where more people will just get so fed up that the cost of speaking out will be outweighed by how fed up they are.
Oh, that's optimistic.
Nice.
Okay, good.
All right, Blaze subscribers, remember, you can catch Overtime on demand. Just go to the on demand, click our show, and catch Overtime. That is starting now.